What are the treasures of your heart? Why are they important? How do we guard them? Life keeps coming day after day. And life can just happen to you if you let it. Sometimes it can just happen to you if you don't let it. We can't control everything, but God has given us an extraordinary amount of control over our own lives. God has given us treasure to own, to enjoy, to care for, to protect. I enjoy life. I inherited some of that from my grandparents. Gramps and Grandma were so full of joy in living. They were like sunshine on a cloudy day. You want to be around those people. They're attractive. You want to know what they know. Well, here's what I know. I enjoy life when I treat it as if it's important. I enjoy my life when I take ownership of it, when I take care of it. I don't enjoy life much when the opposite is true, when I'm letting it just happen to me, when I feel like I'm out of control. I'll bet the same is true of you. In fact, I know it is because I've heard some of your stories. You enjoy life when you're striving for something worthwhile, when you're pursuing a goal, and you stop enjoying life when you quit pursuing goals. You stop enjoying life when you feel like it's just happening to you, like you can't control your own life. Sometimes you can lose joy because you allowed somebody to take it away from you. Today we'll begin a two-part message on treasures of the heart. And we'll ask ourselves two questions as we go down our inventory, our treasure list. Am I caring for my treasure? And is someone else uncaring of my treasure? This list of treasures comes from a teaching by Dr. Henry Cloud, a Christian psychologist and an author most famous for his works on boundaries. He points out that much of what we accept as psychology today was written long before, thousands of years ago, in the Bible. Let's turn to Proverbs 4:23. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. I like the New American Standards version of this. Watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. I can just picture a spring bubbling up, fresh, pure, flowing into a stream that meanders through the countryside until at last it becomes a river, strong, powerful, surging, almost unstoppable. And when you're at the source of the spring, you can turn that almost any way you want, can't you? You can control that. When it becomes a stream, it takes a little more effort, but you can still change its course with some work. When it flows into a river, it's hard to change course. The river can easily sweep you away. What you do at the source can have an enormous impact downstream, can't it? As a matter of fact, what you do at the source is guaranteed to have an enormous impact downstream. You better be careful what we do at the source. Spring is important. It's cared for. It's guarded. This is Texas. If spring gets trampled on a ranch, you're not going to last very long, nor will your cattle without water, will you? It'd be disastrous. Your life flows from your heart. In other words, your heart, which is yours to own, yours to treasure, yours to guard, will determine the course of your life. That's amazing. You get to decide how your life goes. Before we talked about how we direct the course of our lives, we need to understand what boundaries are. Boundaries are property lines. I live out in the country, and there's property lines showing where my land is. If you come on that land, the first thing that will happen is Lexi the Labradoodle will alert you to my presence. She'll be barking. She'll say, "Bark, bark. Chad, there's somebody besides us on the property." We have to decide if they should stay or not. And she looks to me to make that decision. Should I bite this person or should I be kind? I'll come make the decision. Well, what if the dog and I are inside? You might get all the way up to my front door. And then what happens really depends on you. You can ring the doorbell. You can knock. And I'll come answer it and decide if I want to let you in my house or not. It's my house. If you're a friend, if you're a relative, if you're a neighbor, I'll be happy to invite you in for a visit. If you're not one of those three, you're likely not coming in my house. Well, that doesn't mean you're a bad person because I won't let you in my house. It just means it's mine. You could be an Amazon driver, you could be a UPS driver, and you're welcome to come up to my door. You're welcome to ring the doorbell and give me a package. But you're not coming in my house. Even if you're not a bad person. But what if you are a bad person? What if you don't want to ring the doorbell or knock? What if you want to break my door down to get in or smash a window? What happens then? Well, in my house, there's a video camera that's going to record what you're doing. And for the next 30 seconds, what you'll be doing is experiencing 29 years of combat and weapons proficiency. You may not get to star in a sequel. I would suggest using the doorbell, knocking, respecting my boundaries, respecting my property. Our lives, our hearts are the same way. We own them. They're a gift from God. We're responsible for them and we're required to protect them. So the two questions we're going to ask today are, am I caring for my treasure? What does that mean? Well, am I neglecting any one of these treasures, or am I caring for it, paying attention to it, stewarding it? That's what we'll check first. Are we caring for our treasures? And the second question is someone else uncaring of my treasures. This treasure is valuable to me. Am I allowing somebody to rob me of them, take them, throw them on the floor, stomp on them, break them? Those are our questions. Let's look at how we apply those questions to the treasures of our heart. The first treasure of our heart that we'll look at is our feelings. Am I paying attention to my feelings? Am I nurturing them? Feelings are important. Sometimes they get a bad reputation because we've seen people that were just ruled by their feelings. We don't want that, but they're important to pay attention to. They can be like warning lights on the dashboard of your car. They can tell you everything's going fine, or there's a problem. Maybe we need to look at this. So how are you feeling? I'm angry. Okay. That's the first step, admitting what you are, looking at it realistically. How many people have we heard say, I'm not angry? Everybody else knows they are except them, right? We have to pay attention to those feelings. Sometimes we can be feeling something and not even know what we're feeling. We can be angry and not know what's wrong. Have you ever been short-tempered? Had a day where just everything irritated you and you thought, what's wrong with me? Why are these minor frustrations making me so angry? You guys are all saints. Maybe you haven't had a day like that. But I have. Last year, I decided to stop at Bill Miller's, if you can believe it, for lunch. And I got their barbecue chicken, which usually makes me very happy. I got it with a tub of hot sauce. I was still working for the police department, so I decided to eat that in my car. Opened the hot sauce to pour on my chicken and immediately knocked it off the center console onto my side. Now, it was boiling hot barbecue sauce. It was steam still coming off of it, barbecue sauce, and I emptied the entire tub. As it hit my side and my leg, I could feel the burn, but I couldn't do anything about it. Then it ran onto my gun, which has a skeletonized hammer, so it was actually running inside the working parts of my weapon. That's going to take some cleaning. And it fell into some impossible spots to reach between the center console and the seat, guaranteeing that I would get to smell that for the rest of the week. I lost it. I let loose a stream of bad words that would have won me the cussing contest at a sailors' convention. I just wanted to hit something. I was so angry. Instead, I had to go ask for a bunch of napkins to wipe up my mess and another tub of barbecue sauce because it is delicious. As I did that, I asked for God's forgiveness. I'm sorry, Lord, that was terrible. And I thought, what's wrong with me? Why am I so angry? I talked to some of my friends to get their take on it. When I said I had really overreacted, one of my buddies, who's a retired SEAL, said, well, that sounds completely appropriate to me. I don't think there's anything wrong with that reaction. you gotta love warriors, don't you? It made me feel better. But I didn't just need to feel better. I needed some insight. So I talked to another friend of mine who's a retired policeman. And he said, Chad, you are burning the candle at both ends and in the middle. You're working for the church. You're working for the police department. You're running police peer support. You're working with Hope for Heroes. Your dad's dying, so you're grieving. You have got to stop some of this. You have to let some of this go. You're not going to make it. He was right. And I couldn't change all those things right away. But the anger let me know, hey, there's something wrong here. You're going to have to change something or you're headed to disaster. I needed to care for one of my treasures, my feelings. Now, most of what I was feeling I brought on myself. From my clumsiness to my just taking on way too much. But other people can influence our feelings as well, can't they? There's times I've been with a friend and thought, man, I really like her. She's so bright. She makes me feel good about life in general and me in particular. And pay attention to that. That might be a friend that you should spend some more time with. It's gone the other way, too, where you think, oh, that guy is supposed to be my friend, but he is so depressing. I feel like I lost 5 years of my life just having lunch with him. Pay attention to that, too. Next time he asks you to have lunch, maybe you should be busy. After we've looked at our feelings, the next treasure in our inventory is our attitudes. Uh-oh. Now the passage is getting personal. I know, but I'm preaching to myself, too. I have the same issues. How much difference can attitude make? Well, I heard a story about two kids that were excited on Christmas morning. We just went through Christmas, so maybe it was just a few weeks ago. They went running downstairs early in the morning to see what was under the tree. And when they got there was a pile of poop on the floor under the tree. And one of the kids said, "This is horrible. This is the worst Christmas ever. Look, there's a pile of poop under the tree." And the other one said, "A puppy? We got a puppy? This is the best Christmas ever." Same circumstances, same problems, same blessings too. Completely different conclusions, completely different attitudes. What a difference it makes. Do you believe that life just happens to you? That you don't have control over what happens in your life? That's a victim's attitude. Now hear me, I'm not saying that you weren't victimized. I'm not saying that something didn't happen to you wrong against your wishes. But what did you do about it? How did you respond to it? A couple years ago, I had someone who said she would love me forever suddenly stop. Some of you have had that experience, but when she stopped, she took most of my things with her. While I was helping my dad check off his bucket list with a vacation to Minnesota, she was cleaning out my house. When I got home, the house was filthy and had been ransacked. I've seen burglarized houses look far better than mine. My tools had been taken, some of them. Almost everything was taken out of the kitchen. I didn't have a fork to eat with. I didn't have a plate to put it on. I didn't have pots and pans to cook anything. I didn't have so much as a paper plate or a solo cup or a napkin. I didn't have anything to sit on. That December, when Allison came over to help me put up the Christmas tree, I found out that the Grinch had stolen that too. So what do? Sit around and cry about it? Wasn't fair. I didn't cause it. It wasn't my fault. But it was my responsibility. I had to take ownership of the situation I found myself in. It was time to work some overtime, wasn't it? It was time to go to Walmart to buy pots and pans and dishes and silverware and napkins and solo cups. It was time to buy a couch and a love seat. It was time to buy a TV. I had replaced tools that I needed. I had to buy a Christmas tree at the most expensive time of the year to do that if I was going to have a tree in my house that year. Having a positive attitude and going in a positive direction doesn't mean that something wrong didn't happen to me. But it did mean when there was a part of my life I could take ownership of again, and there was a part of my life I could control. I didn't waste any time being a victim. Don't be a victim in your life. Be a captain of your life. It's important to monitor our feelings. It's important to check our attitudes because they often lead to the next item on our treasure list, behaviors. Are you owning your behaviors? Disowning them or excusing them keeps us stuck. Owning them and examining them lets us either continue or change course, change direction. Before I entered the police academy, I had a background investigator contact my family, my friends, my previous employers to see if they should hire me as a police officer. He kept in touch with me as well. Now, the academy was big on physical fitness, and they had a strong running program. They had us run 6 or 7 miles 3 days a week. So before you got there, you better be in running shape. That investigator called me one evening and said, "Chad, did you run today?" And I said, "No, I worked a 16-hour day at my construction job with Gary." So I didn't run. I wasn't owning my behavior, was I? I was excusing it. I was blaming somebody else for it. That investigator didn't even waste time acknowledging my excuse. He just went straight to the heart of the matter. "Chad, I don't think you want this job badly enough. I don't think we should hire you as a police officer." I said, "Sir, I want this job badly. And I give you my word, I'll run 3 miles a day every day until the academy starts." And I did. There was one day that I worked until 1 in the morning running a load of steel down to McAllen. When I got there, I was going to spend the night with relatives, and they said, "Chad, we've got a room ready for you. You can go right to bed." I said, No, I can't. I got to run 3 miles. They thought that sounded crazy, but I had to keep my word. I had to have my behavior match what I wanted. And that story illustrates a couple of important questions to ask about behavior. Ask yourself, what do I want? And if somebody was watching what I'm doing, would they know what I want? Our behaviors are important. They set the direction for our lives. Feelings, attitudes, behaviors, they're all vital. The next treasure we'll examine is our choices. Choices are so valuable. In fact, they're a measure of happiness. They're a measure of satisfaction with life if you believe that you have choices. People who see themselves as free to choose are free. People who believe they have no choice are imprisoned by their circumstances. I've had to remind myself that I have choices. I reminded some of you that you have choices too. You know I love Mustangs. I'm on Mustang number 5 right now. But I went 5 years without one. One of my friends asked, "Hey, Chad, where's your Mustang?" "Oh, I sold it." "You going to get another one?" "No, I can't afford it." Was that true? Well, on the surface it was, but I'd been working for the police department for decades. A Mustang should not have been out of my budget. The truth was I had spent tens of thousands of dollars on somebody else. Someone I loved, someone who said she needed my help. Now, I might have said I had to help her. She was in a job she hated. She needed to go to school to change careers. She couldn't afford her bills. What would happen to her if I didn't help? But here's the truth. I couldn't afford that Mustang because I had chosen to spend the money on her instead. I didn't have to help her. I had chosen to help her. Is that noble of me or stupid? Yes. A little bit of both, perhaps. There are some problems with helping the people that we love too much. Sometimes it isn't truly help at all. She had used drugs. She'd been an alcoholic. She'd racked up an incredible amount of debt. She'd made irresponsible, reckless, dangerous, and damaging decisions for many years. And then she found Jesus, and she met me. She had an inspiring testimony, a riveting story. But even though she had been forgiven, just like all of us, the consequences of her decisions would have to be paid for by her, unless they were paid by me. And so I interfered with the law of sowing and reaping. The Bible says that you reap what you sow, and that's true. Most of us have learned to live with that principle. It's kind of like gravity. We don't have much choice. But there's some exceptions, at least temporarily. Or decisions to party, to jump from job to job, to take out loans and not pay them back, to get drunk and then drive, left her broke and desperate. My decisions to work hard, stay with the same company, be sober and save for years meant that I had money in the bank and my bills paid. But when I helped her, I enabled her to escape the consequences of her choices. You can only do that by paying for them yourself. So I received the consequences of her bad decisions. I paid for them until I didn't have money in the bank, until I couldn't afford the things that normally I could. And she received the rewards of my good decisions. Her bills were paid. She was able to get the education she needed. She was able to change jobs, begin working in a field that she loved. But she didn't appreciate that very much. She didn't learn anything from her choices. Learned nothing from her bad decisions. She's still making them. She still rack up debt with whoever is foolish enough to issue her credit. She won't pay it back. Meanwhile, now that I'm not paying for somebody else's bad choices, my bills are paid, there's money in the bank, and there's a really nice Mustang in the garage again. I've heard your stories too. I know that many of you have suffered for the people that you love, for their bad choices. Well, if I don't help him, he'll go hungry. If I don't help him, he'll have no place to stay. If I don't help her, she'll wind up in jail. Yep, they might. All those things might happen. But realize as you help someone that you're making a choice to help them. You're free to help or to not help. You're free to decide how much help you can give. Those are your choices. That sets you free to either help without any resentment or choose not to help because it's going to cost you too much. Maybe it's time to let them reap what they've sown. Are you still in that job that you hate? You have a choice. Are you still in that friendship that's harmful? You have a choice. Are you helping that person that always needs your help? You have a choice. So let's stop saying, I don't have any choice because, yes, you do. You have choices. Let's use them wisely. Along with recognizing that we have choices, we have to recognize that we have limits. Limits are another treasure for us to guard. If we don't recognize our limits, we'll run out. We'll run out of money. We'll run out of time. We'll run out of energy. We'll run out of want to. And we'll end up resenting the people who are using our time, energy, and money. But it's not their fault. It's not their job to know what your limits are and be careful not to exceed them. That's your job. It's your treasure, and you need to value it and guard it. I literally have a nice way to say no, a list of them, pinned to my bulletin board. If you call and ask me for too much during the week, you'll get to hear one of them. No is an important word, isn't it? You decide how much of somebody else's problem you let become your own. How much of their issues you let consume your time, your energy, your resources. There's a few familiar sayings about that. The lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. Don't let somebody else's problems become your problems. Why do those sayings exist? Because setting limits is vital for your well-being. Your time, your energy, your resources, they're finite. They are not limitless. So let's not act as if we are limitless. This morning we've looked at the treasures of our hearts, feelings, attitudes, behaviors, choices, and limits. Taking ownership of each of those treasures is crucial in building a fruitful, joyful life. 2 questions to ask yourself as you examine your treasures are, am I caring for my treasure? And is someone else uncaring of my treasure? This week I invite you to examine your heart's treasures in light of those 2 questions so that you can begin to live intentionally rather than letting life happen to you. Let's create a life that we can treasure. Amen.